In the early 20th century, archaeologists unearthed clay tablets in the ruins of ancient palaces, inscribed with strange symbols that no one could read. These mysterious tablets discovered at sites like Knossos and Pylos were written in two distinct scripts, Linear B and its older counterpart, Linear A. To the archaeologists, these tablets were more than relics. They were keys to an ancient world whose language and beliefs had been lost for millennia. For decades, scholars debated what the symbols could mean. Were they simply records of trade, mundane lists of inventory, or something more profound? Many suspected they might offer clues to a civilization that predated the classical age of Greece. Others hoped they contained secrets of myths and gods that shaped the ancient world. But deciphering these scripts proved daunting. Linear B, though visually similar to Linear A, had no clear connection to any known language at the time. Linear A, even more mysterious, seemed utterly impenetrable. Without a bilingual text, something akin to the Rosetta Stone, deciphering either seemed like an impossible task. And yet these scripts tantalized researchers with the promise of uncovering an untold chapter of human history. The breakthrough came in 1952 when a British architect named Michael Ventris made a bold claim. Linear B, he argued, was Greek, an earlier form of the language spoken centuries before Homer composed the Iliad and Odyssey. Using place names and patterns, Ventris proved that this ancient script wasn't just a forgotten relic. It was a bridge to a civilization that thrived during the Late Bronze Age. The decipherment of Linear B revolutionized what we knew about ancient Greece, revealing that many gods of classical mythology, Zeus, Poseidon, and Dionysus, had already been worshipped in the Mycenaean world. But as extraordinary as this discovery was, it raised an even bigger question. Or what about Linear A? Older than Linear B and written by the Minoans, this script remains undeciphered. Could it hold the secrets of even earlier myths and gods, the true origins of the pantheon we know today? Linear B gave us a glimpse into the Mycenaean world, but Linear A remains silent, an enigma locked away in undeciphered symbols. And that silence continues to fuel one of the greatest linguistic mysteries of our time. Before Linear B was deciphered, our understanding of the Mycenaeans and Minoans relied on fragments, artifacts, ruins, and the tantalizing but incomplete accounts of later Greek writers. Scholars pieced together the past with educated guesswork, but their conclusions were often more speculative than certain. Take the Mycenaeans, for instance. This civilization was known for its grand palaces, its elaborate goldwork, and its role in the legendary Trojan War. Homer's epics painted a vivid picture of their world, full of gods, warriors, and divine interventions. But Homer's stories were written centuries after the Mycenaeans disappeared. How much of their religion and daily life survived in these poetic accounts? Without written records, the connection between Homer's gods and the Mycenaean pantheon remained uncertain. Then there were the Minoans, the enigmatic civilization that thrived on Crete before the rise of the Mycenaeans. Their art was filled with symbols of bulls, goddesses, and elaborate rituals. Archaeologists uncovered frescoes of bull leaping and statues of the snake goddess, which hinted at a culture deeply connected to nature and fertility. Yet without understanding their script, Linear A, the meaning behind these images remained elusive. Did these goddesses inspire later deities like Demeter or Artemis? Did their rituals shape Mycenaean practices? No one could say for sure. One of the prevailing theories before Linear B was deciphered was that both the Mycenaeans and Minoans worshipped gods entirely different from the Olympian pantheon. Some scholars suggested that the classical gods emerged later during the Archaic period. Others believed there might be a faint connection, but without textual evidence, such ideas were speculative at best. The biggest gap was in understanding religion. The ruins of Knossos and Mycenae revealed much about architecture and trade, but what about their beliefs? What gods did they worship? What rituals governed their lives? The frescoes, altars, and artifacts suggested a world rich with symbolism, but without a written record, scholars could only guess. Linear B changed all that. It didn't just fill in gaps, it rewrote the narrative, proving that the Mycenaeans were not only literate but also deeply religious, with gods whose names and stories endured into the classical era. But before this breakthrough, the world of the Mycenaeans and Minoans was, in many ways, a blank slate, waiting for a language to bring it to life. In 1952, the ancient mystery of Linear B was solved by an unlikely figure. Michael Ventris, a British architect with no formal training in archaeology. For years, scholars believed Linear B encoded a language unrelated to Greek, perhaps even a language spoken by a lost, forgotten culture. But Ventris had a bold theory. What if Linear B was Greek, not the Greek of Homer, but an earlier form of the language? Ventris approached the problem with meticulous logic, focusing on patterns within the script. He noticed recurring symbols in tablet inscriptions and hypothesized they might represent place names. Using this as a foundation, he cross-referenced these patterns with known archaeological sites like Knossos and Pylos. Slowly but surely, he began to match symbols with sounds. His breakthrough came when he realized that these symbols aligned with Greek words. The revelation was monumental. Linear B wasn't a foreign or lost language, and it was Greek, written centuries before anyone thought possible. This wasn't just a linguistic discovery, it extended the history of the Greek language by 500 years, pushing the origins of written Greek into the late Bronze Age. But Ventris didn't work alone. His findings were strengthened by the collaboration of John Chadwick, a Cambridge linguist. Chadwick helped refine Ventris's interpretations, confirming the decipherment and solidifying its place as one of the great intellectual achievements of the 20th century. Together they revealed that these tablets were not just records of trade or inventories, they were windows into the Mycenaean world. Among the most fascinating discoveries in Linear B were the names of gods, familiar names. Zeus appeared as Diwo, Poseidon as Posidao, and even Dionysus, the god of wine, was recorded in these ancient texts. This was proof that many of the gods we associate with classical mythology were already worshipped by the Mycenaeans, long before the epics of Homer were composed. The decipherment of Linear B wasn't just an academic triumph, it was a revelation. It showed that the Mycenaean world was not an isolated relic, but a direct ancestor of classical Greece. Their language, their gods, their rituals, all of it connected to the cultural foundation that would later shape Western civilization. The gods uncovered in Linear B tablets were more than just names. They were the spiritual anchors of the Mycenaean world, deeply intertwined with their daily lives and rituals. These ancient records inscribed on clay revealed not only the existence of familiar deities, but also the practices and beliefs that surrounded their worship. Poseidon, for example, was a central figure in the Mycenaean pantheon. But in these tablets, he wasn't just the god of the sea, as we know him today. Poseidon was also revered as a god of earthquakes, a force of nature both feared and worshipped by a civilization living in a tectonically active region. His dual role as a god of the sea and the earth highlights the Mycenaeans' relationship with the natural forces that shaped their world. Zeus, or Diwo, also appeared in these texts, though his role seemed less dominant than it would become in later Greek mythology. In the Mycenaean world, Zeus was primarily a sky god associated with storms and weather. His evolution into the king of the gods, ruling from Mount Olympus, would come much later, shaped by centuries of cultural development. Then there was Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, whose presence in Linear B was a surprising discovery. Many had assumed Dionysus was a later addition to the Greek pantheon, a deity introduced during the classical period. But the Mycenaean records proved otherwise. Dionysus was already part of their religious practices, challenging long-held assumptions about the origins of this chaotic, vibrant god. The tablets didn't just name these gods, they detailed the rituals performed in their honor. Offerings of oil, honey, and livestock were meticulously recorded, showing that worship was not a casual act, but an organized communal effort. Festivals, sacrifices, and ceremonies played a central role in Mycenaean society, binding their people to their gods and to each other. These records also hinted at the cultural transition between the Mycenaeans and the classical Greeks. The gods of Linear B were not yet the fully developed figures we recognize today, but their presence showed the continuity of belief, the seeds of a pantheon that would dominate Western imagination for millennia. Linear B didn't just reveal the past, it bridged the gap between two worlds, showing how myths and rituals evolved over time. The gods named in Linear B were not mere relics of a distant past. They were living deities, worshipped with fervor by a civilization that saw the divine in every aspect of their world. Linear B gave these gods their earliest written voices, voices that would echo through the ages in the myths of classical Greece. Linear A predates Linear B, and it was the script of the Minoans, a civilization that flourished on Crete long before the Mycenaeans rose to power. While Linear B gave us a remarkable glimpse into the Mycenaean world, Linear A remains undeciphered, a locked chest filled with secrets that could reshape everything we know about the origins of Greek mythology. Linear A shares visual similarities with Linear B, and some of its symbols overlap. But here's the twist. While Linear B encodes an early form of Greek, Linear A represents an entirely different language, one that has no clear connection to any known linguistic family. This distinction is what makes deciphering Linear A so difficult. Without a bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone for Egyptian hieroglyphs, and with only a limited number of surviving inscriptions, scholars have found themselves staring at symbols they can't unlock. Yet the tantalizing hints about Minoan religion suggest that Linear A could hold answers to some of history's biggest questions. The Minoans worshipped a pantheon that appears to have been centered around powerful female deities. The iconic snake goddess figurines with their raised arms and hypnotic poses are among the most famous images from this period. They suggest a society that placed women or goddesses at the heart of their spiritual beliefs. Another recurring symbol in Minoan culture is the bull, depicted in frescoes of bull-leaping rituals and other forms of religious art. These images may have been connected to worship or sacrificial practices. Could these bulls and goddesses have inspired figures like Demeter or Artemis in later Greek mythology? And could the story of the Minotaur, famously tied to Crete, have its roots in Minoan ritual? If deciphered, Linear A might answer these questions. It could reveal the names of Minoan gods, the structure of their rituals, and the stories that underpinned their society. It could show how the Mycenaeans inherited and transformed Minoan beliefs, creating the foundation for what would later become Greek mythology. Or it might surprise us completely, offering a pantheon and a worldview entirely different from anything we've seen before. What's at stake is more than just language. It's the ability to understand the origins of Western culture. The gods of Linear A might be the precursors to Zeus, Hera, and Poseidon, or they might be something else entirely, a forgotten pantheon that predates the myths we know. Until we decipher Linear A, we can only speculate, but the potential for discovery is immense. Linear B showed us the Mycenaeans' gods and their structured rituals, but Linear A promises something even greater, the origin stories that came before. And when we finally unlock it, we may find that Greek mythology began not with Zeus or Poseidon, but with gods whose names and stories have yet to be spoken. Linear B revealed a world where gods like Zeus and Poseidon were already worshipped, their names carved into clay over 3,000 years ago. But those gods didn't emerge fully formed in the Mycenaean age. The continuity of symbols and practices suggests that the Mycenaeans inherited much of their religious framework from the Minoans, whose beliefs are locked within Linear A. This connection between the two scripts is the missing link in the evolution of Greek mythology. The Mycenaeans' Potnia, or mistress, frequently referenced in Linear B, is thought to be a direct continuation of Minoan goddess worship. Minoan culture, as seen through their art and artifacts, centered on powerful female deities connected to fertility, nature, and the cycles of life. Linear A, if deciphered, might reveal the names and attributes of these goddesses, bridging the gap between the Minoan and Mycenaean worlds. Ritual practices also show striking similarities. The Mycenaeans recorded offerings of oil, honey, and livestock to their gods, a practice that seems to echo the Minoans' focus on agriculture and fertility. Linear A could provide deeper insights into these rituals, showing how they evolved into the structured ceremonies described in Linear B, and later into the classical Greek traditions we recognize today. The story of the Minotaur is a vivid example of how myths may have transformed across these cultures. The labyrinth and the bull at the heart of this myth are rooted in Minoan culture, where bull-leaping rituals and labyrinthine palace designs were central symbols. Linear A might reveal the original meanings behind these symbols, explaining how a ritual became a myth. The historical irony is striking. While the Mycenaeans borrowed so much from the Minoans, it is the Mycenaean language, through Linear B, that we can read. The Minoans, who laid the cultural foundation, remain voiceless, their words locked away in Linear A, but even in silence their influence is undeniable. The Mycenaean gods documented in Linear B carry echoes of Minoan beliefs, suggesting a shared heritage that formed the roots of Greek mythology. Linear A isn't just an undeciphered script, it's a key to understanding the cultural and religious evolution that shaped the ancient world. Its decipherment could reveal how myths were born, how rituals transformed into legends, and how the gods of Crete and Mycenae became the Olympians of Greece. Until that day, the relationship between Linear A and Linear B remains an unfinished story, one that hints at the deep, interconnected threads of ancient civilization. The deciphering of Linear B was a triumph that unlocked a window into the Mycenaean world, revealing its language, its gods, and its rituals. It showed us that the roots of Greek mythology extended far deeper than Homeric epics or classical literature. Yet as much as Linear B revealed, it also raised profound questions that point directly to Linear A. Linear B confirmed that gods like Zeus, Poseidon, and Dionysus were worshipped long before the classical era. But it didn't explain their origin. Where did these gods come from? Were they creations of the Mycenaean imagination? Or did they have even older roots in the Minoan world? Linear A, the script of the Minoans, might hold the answer to these mysteries. The stakes are enormous. If Linear A is deciphered, it could show how myths evolved from one civilization to the next. It might reveal the Minoan precursors to Zeus and Poseidon, or it could introduce entirely new gods and myths, offering a glimpse into a forgotten pantheon. It could even change how we understand the relationship between the Mycenaeans and the Minoans, revealing not just cultural borrowing, but a shared spiritual heritage. But deciphering Linear A is no simple task. Unlike Linear B, which had the advantage of containing recognizable Greek place names, Linear A has no such Rosetta Stone. It encodes a language that appears unrelated to any known linguistic family, and its surviving inscriptions are limited in number. Researchers are now turning to advanced technologies, including AI and computational analysis, to try and crack the code. The process is slow and painstaking, but the potential rewards are immeasurable. The unanswered questions surrounding Linear A are a reminder of how much of history remains hidden. The Minoans were a civilization of immense influence, shaping the art, trade, and religion of the ancient Aegean. Yet because we cannot read their words, their voices are silent. The decipherment of Linear A would not just solve a linguistic puzzle. It would give life to a civilization whose contributions have been overshadowed by those who came after. The journey from Linear B to Linear A is a story of continuity and mystery, of what we've discovered and what remains unknown. Linear B gave us the names of gods and the details of rituals, but Linear A promises the origin stories, the myths that came before. It could reveal the first whispers of gods whose influence stretched across centuries, shaping the Mycenaean world and ultimately the Greek pantheon. So, what will Linear A tell us? Will it confirm what we suspect, that the Minoans laid the foundation for Greek mythology? Or will it reveal something entirely unexpected, rewriting the origins of the gods we thought we knew? For now, linear A remains a locked door, but history has taught us that no mystery is unsolvable forever. One day, when that door finally opens, it may redefine not just our understanding of ancient Greece, but the very roots of Western mythology. And until that day, we're left to wonder how much of what we know about the gods is only the beginning of the story.